Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics. 48 hours before the general election, we are joined by two of the folks at the tip of the spear, right on the top of the top ballot measure that you're going to vote on Tuesday. Blake Hurst, the President of the Missouri Farm Bureau. Let's talk Amendment 3.
Well, we're supporting Amendment 3. We'd urge all your viewers to vote yes on Amendment 3. What Amendment 3 will do is sort of restore the way we've done redistricting for many years in Missouri. Through that time, we've had supermajorities of Democrats in the state legislature. We've had supermajorities of Republicans. It's a pretty good system. When you look at Missouri compared to other states across the nation, we're about in the middle by the measures that political scientists use to measure gerrymandering. So it's served us well, and we'd like to see it restored.
I think, my mama, some folks in the playground call me fat. My mama called me big bone. Maybe gerrymandering is like body types in the eye of the beholder, right?
What's that?
Gerrymandering in the eye of the beholder. Representative Tracy McCreery, you are against Amendment 3 for the Clean Missouri plan. Tell folks what Clean Missouri did to change the system we'd had forever and why that was a good thing.
Sure. So back in 2018, Missouri voters of all political stripes overwhelmingly supported Clean Missouri, which was a package of ethics reforms that only applied to the Missouri legislature. And part of that package, part of that reform package, would address gerrymandering, or how we draw fair and competitive districts. So that was passed in 2018. So now where we are today is Amendment 3 would seek to undo one of the key changes that the voters made just 2 short years ago.
All right, Tracy McCreery, there has been a system that had been in place. Essentially what would happen, you'd have anomalies, but since the Constitution set how we drew legislative districts, they would go through a commission, all these things, but really a panel of appellate court judges would draw these maps. They drew them 10 years ago. Now, I would say, frankly, that the Democrats are at a disadvantage. You live in very densely populated areas, and they're right on the state line, so you can't really draw districts out to the suburbs and maybe you have 60-40 districts Democrats. You have 90-10 Democrat districts. And it kind of is a disadvantage, but is that not more of just geography than it is some gerrymandering system?
Well, I believe that it's wrong to look at this issue through a partisan lens, even though we are partisan folks. Missouri voters overwhelmingly support fairness, competitiveness, and transparency, and that's what Clean Missouri was about. And what Amendment 3 is going to do, if it were to pass, which I don't think it will, but it would undo all of those things that Missourians share as a Missouri value. So
all right, let me just ask
partisan.
You the question that we've heard at this desk for 2 years now. You're a St. Louis politician. I'm a simple West Butler County hillbilly. Was this not a system come up with by Clean Missouri because Democrats had a lot of trouble since they became pro-choice and pro-gun control? They couldn't compete in legislative seats. Was Clean Missouri not a system to help them win some legislative seats?
Well, I don't believe, when you think about all the prominent Republicans that supported Clean Missouri and now are opposed to Amendment 3, it can't be about the Democratic policies, because there are so many prominent Republicans, including Senator Huff, Representative Rocky Miller, former U.S. Senator Danforth, that support this, and they wouldn't be doing something that overtly would help Democrats. Missouri values support fairness, competitiveness, and transparency, and that's what Clean Missouri did.
Should have hired Jack Danforth's law firm. He'd be quiet as a church mouse. Is the Amendment 3 not just a way? I thought it was a little bit of a very good point. When folks would sit on this panel and they'd say they're using ethics reform to come through with a gerrymandering redistricting system to help elect Democrats. And I think, well, one, that was very intelligent, and maybe you had a point. When the Republicans come back with their proposal in Amendment 3, is this not aren't you using the same tactics? You got a little ethics reform in here to kind of distract folks, and it's a pretty partisan Republican way to draw maps.
Well, as I mentioned before, it'll be going back to the system we've had for a very long time that has resulted in supermajorities of both parties. Tracy said a lot of things there that I guess first off, this idea that we voted on it 2 years ago, so it's enshrined in the Constitution, can never be changed. I mean, the only thing to me in Missouri that can't be changed are that statue of Stan Musial and the columns at Jesse Hall. Other than that, we get the chance to chase our minds. Clean Missouri was passed because people were voting for a package of ethics reforms, all of which will be improved by Amendment 3. But the idea that we were sold a bill of goods, that we did not understand what the redistricting thing would do to local communities that we'd like to keep together, to people of like interests that we'd like to keep together. There are districts in St. Louis where it's 95% one way. How are you going to make those districts competitive? The only way you can do that is to stretch those districts out into rural areas to mix people with different interests different lifestyles, different way they live and the way they think about the world. And it's going to be a very difficult job for representatives to represent those districts because there's going to be so much difference in the voters.
I understand it is not essentially fair that this state may be 55-45 Republican, but there's supermajorities of Republicans in the legislature. It is not reflective, maybe, of the overall Missourians. But the fact is, I think it's more population density and geography that inhibit Democrats. And can you get what you want here to have more Democrats in the legislature without creating some kind of spidering districts out through the suburbs?
Well, this concept has been debunked years ago, so I'm sort of disappointed that we're even talking about that. The Constitution says that overall the plan has to be fair, not each individual district. So it's already in the Constitution that overall things have to be fair. And a nonpartisan analysis of this showed that only about 20% of our districts would end up being competitive. So we would still end up with very safe Republican districts, which would make your folks happy, and safe Democratic districts. So it would be about making about 20% of the districts truly competitive. So, but what I think is getting lost in this conversation is Missourians, and especially Missouri farmers, recognize a wolf in sheep's clothing when they see it. And this plan, Amendment 3, is very, very deceptive. It's over 5,000 words. And there's just these little things that are attempting to trick voters at the very beginning. So a reduction in lobbyist gifts of just $5, and only a 4% reduction in the amount of contributions that can go to state Senate candidates. So the real meat of this, and where voters, I think, are suspicious and have a right to be suspicious, is why are there 5,000 words? And the bulk of that has to do with redoing how Missouri draws their districts, unlike anything that's ever been done in this country.
It's quite confusing, but is it kind of like what Clean Missouri did? You're talking about ethics reform and you're bringing in your own system.
So the gift limits go from $5 to $0. So from something to nothing is a big difference.
With plenty of
We
loopholes.
changed the ability of the contribution limits to be tied to inflation. I think it's so, in other words, it will limit them for all time at that level instead of growing with inflation. I think it's so disingenuous to say that this is a Missouri, when 80% of the funding is coming from outside the state, from 98% of the funding for this is coming in contributions of $500,000 or more. George Soros is trying to change the way people in Missouri vote. That's not right, that's not fair, and I hope on Tuesday Missouri voters will realize that the wolf in sheep clothing is coming from New York and Los Angeles and Houston and is trying to change the way we govern. And I would point out that Clean Missouri has never been done anywhere before. That kind of demographer to do the redistricting, that kind of redistricting plan is a grand experiment. So what we have here is a bunch of out-of-state funders who are using Missouri as a guinea pig to redistrict in a different way, and it's a bad idea.
All right, Representative, let's say you and I are standing by the state municipal statue in the rotunda talking. Tell me why this is not essentially just, it's partisan. If you're a Republican, you want this Republican plan to draw districts. Democrat, you want the other plan. Everything's going to be partisan. Tell me why folks should vote for this and why this isn't just the Republican version of Clean Missouri.
Well, right now, the status quo is not working for the state of Missouri, and that's why Clean Missouri passed, and that's why I'm urging people to vote no on Amendment 3. We need to put forward a fresh start so that voters have a true choice when they go to vote. So there are districts right now that are so gerrymandered that voters don't have options when they go to vote in a general election, and I don't believe that that's democratic with a small d. So what we need to do is make sure voters understand Amendment 3 is all about redoing redistricting in a way that's never been tried in this country before, let alone the state of Missouri. It's very, very concerning to me that in the fine print that we are saying we are not going to count children for purposes of redistricting. We have 1.5 million children in the state of Missouri that would not be counted, and I think a lot of your members especially would want children to be counted.
Well, let's say we're at the cattle barn at the state fair. Tell me in 1 minute why folks should vote for this, especially maybe if they are Republican.
First off, to go to Tracy's point, Politico, a prominent lawyer from the Washington University here in St. Louis, who's otherwise an opponent of Amendment 3, and the backer of the bill, the guy that carried the bill, all three say that children will continue to be counted. That is not true. We know that it won't happen that way, so we ought to make it clear. People should vote for this. People should vote for Amendment 3 because it keeps their communities together and pays attention to city limits, to county borders. It doesn't stretch districts to the breaking point. It lets you vote with your neighbors and be represented by your neighbor, and that's a Missouri value that I think is worth keeping.
Blake Hurst, thank you so much for joining us. Tracy McCreery, appreciate you all being here talking about this.
Thank you.
We will be right back with our pre-election opinion maker panel. We're going to get some great predictions we can hold up and say they were wrong from guys like Jeff Rainford and David Barklage after this. But first, go to showmissouri.com. The history of Missouri, one county at a time. This week we're in Franklin County, named after Ben Franklin. All kinds of history happened just down the Missouri River in Franklin County. Go to showmissouri.com and stay with us for our opinion maker panel right before the election after this.
I'm Ann Wagner, and I approve this message.
I'm Jill Shoup. Here's the truth. I don't support Medicare for all.
Does Jill Shoup think we're stupid? Whose name is on this Medicare for all bill? And this one. It's yours, Shoup. You can't fool us. You pushed for a complete government takeover of healthcare twice.
You deserve a representative you can trust.
We know. That's why we don't support you. Jill Shoup's already shown she's too radical and too extreme for Missouri.
Pay-to-play Nicole Galloway is embroiled in scandal and controversy. Her alleged corruption is shocking. Galloway took nearly $500,000 from an organization whose leadership was convicted of bribery, embezzlement, and money laundering. Missouri's Attorney General said Galloway committed a felony. And now the Board of Accountancy is investigating Galloway for abusing her office for political gain. Pay-to-play Nicole Galloway, a disturbing pattern of corruption. Another shady Jefferson City politician.
The Defund the Police movement is a real threat to public safety and Missouri families. I'm Eric Schmidt. As your Attorney General, I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with law enforcement to put violent criminals behind bars. That's why I've launched the Safer Streets Partnership with federal prosecutors in Missouri to give stiffer sentences to violent felons. That's already resulted in over 300 charges being filed.
Eric Schmidt, Missouri's tough-on-crime law and order Attorney General.
Teenager Mike Kehoe washed cars to help his single mother make ends meet. Mike would go on to build a successful business, become a first-generation farmer, guide to passage the largest tax cut in Missouri history, fully fund our schools, and set the foundation for record job growth.
We're going to get through this pandemic, and I'm working every day to create the good-paying jobs Missourians need.
Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe. Leadership, values, common sense.
It's a circus, all right. Jefferson City politicians trying to distract you with an old-school sideshow. Amendment 3, 5,000 words of smoke and mirrors put on the ballot by politicians. The truth? Amendment 3 has lobbyist gift loopholes and lets insiders draw legislative districts that protect their favorite politicians. No wonder judges call it misleading and unfair. Send a message to those clowns. Vote no to their dirty tricks. Vote no on Amendment 3.
It's the Koenig Crush. Everywhere he goes, Andrew Koenig crushes Missouri working families. Koenig opposed a plan to save our good-paying auto jobs. He supported an extreme corporate agenda that could have cut take-home pay for workers. And in the middle of a pandemic, Koenig wants to crush us again by ending protections for people with pre-existing conditions. So look out, St. Louis County. Andrew Koenig's coming to crush you.
Your energy needs are changing. That's why at Ameren, Missouri, we're not waiting on the future. We're building it with the Smart Energy Plan, advancing thousands of projects across the state, helping reduce emissions through cleaner energy sources, boost reliability with self-healing equipment, and better withstand storms with new composite poles. Moving Missouri forward and bringing us all a little closer together. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to Week in Missouri Politics. Pre-election opinion maker panel get the great predictions that we can use later. Jeff Rainford, the most effective man in St. Louis. Thank you for joining us again.
Scott, miss being here. Glad to be here.
Representative Keisha Bosley, City of St. Louis. Welcome back.
Thank you, Scott. It's good to be here.
Mary Elizabeth Coleman, the Iron Lady of Jeffco, keeping the health departments in check. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much.
And the Dean of the Missouri Republican Party, David Barklage. Welcome back, sir.
Thanks, sir.
Let's talk presidential race. Obviously Trump's not going to do plus 19. I thought he might do a little maybe plus 5, but after that debate, what are you going to hit?
Look, I think the debate helped him a lot because he didn't open the door completely to people and convince them of civility and that maybe some of the things we'd like to see. But he did restrain himself. He did get to policy, and I think that was helpful to some people in the bubble. But one of the things that we're seeing is You got to remember the same time 4 years ago, he was up 8 in Missouri. Today he's up 5, but he finished it at plus 19. And a couple of trends we're seeing around the country that are very strange is normally low propensity voters. When we see absentees, they tend to be Democrat dominated because of the effective efforts Democrats do in getting those. This time we're seeing Republicans outperforming. We're also seeing in new voters, we normally see those as young college, more from Democrat precincts. We're seeing them older. We're seeing them from Republican precincts. And the last tale that I find is very fascinating is that I'm going to probably forget it here, is that when we poll, we ask people not only who you're voting for president, but who you think your friends and neighbors are. In Missouri, our last poll came out, Trump was up 5, but people who thought their friends and neighbors were voting for Trump, 23-point margin. So something's happening out there. I don't know if that means the election will go to Trump, but it means that it's going to be a much different election on election night than it is today.
Jeff, remember, the honeymoon's not over for Trump in Missouri, but it's we're toward the second week, right?
Well, I mean, Donald Trump is going to win Missouri. We're a Republican state, and so, I mean, that's why none of the candidates have come here and campaigned here. But nationally, I think 3 things are very different from 4 years ago. Number one is there are fewer overall demographically, whether they've registered or not, there are fewer Trump voters and there are more Democratic voters, just the way things have changed the last 4 years. Number 2 is Hillary Clinton was very unpopular. I think her approval rating was like -20, and Biden's is -1. And number 3, James Comey is not the head of the FBI, and he's not in any kind of a place to do something stupid.
Yeah. Representative, your district is kind of like the one I'm from down the Boot Hill. It's about turnout. Generally, if folks turn out, they're going to vote Democrat.
Yeah.
Are they going to turn out?
I believe they are going to turn out. I think the problem is when you talk about the absentee process and you talk about mail-in balloting, there's been this large push against people wanting to actually go because of the languages that's put in place, because of the defunding of the Postal Service. So a lot of people don't trust that. So yeah, you're not going to have a large Democratic turnout when it comes to absentee and mail-ins. We're going to go straight to the ballot box. We're going to go straight to the polls. We're going to make sure that we vote in person so that we are counted. So I think we're going to have turnout.
Against Donald Trump or for Joe Biden?
For Joe Biden, of course. Yes, they're going to vote in favor.
Representative, when I think of places that Donald Trump could be emperor and king, no question, I think the Highway 67 corridor. Donald Trump owns Jefferson County, and I get the sense he still does.
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody who voted in 2016 for Donald Trump in Jefferson County isn't thrilled to turn out for him in 2020. And I think the president outperforms what the polls say. You see multiple paths to victory. If he wins Pennsylvania, if he wins Wisconsin, he just has to win 2 of those 5 states, and then we're going to see him back in the White House.
He says he outperforms the polls here in Missouri. What's he going to do?
So I think no matter what number I say, I'm going to be wrong on this, but I think we're going to see, so I think we're going to see him obviously not hit that 19%. That's a really high watermark, but he's going to do much higher than 8 or 9% that the polls are showing.
Where's he going to hit?
I think he's going to hit low double digits, and I think Pennsylvania is the key on election night. If Pennsylvania goes for Trump,
isn't a number.
I think, well, I'll say 11%. But watch Pennsylvania.
I think that it's going to be low because you have so many people who are just frustrated with him on both sides. So I think, like Mary Elizabeth, it's not going to be accurate, but I think it'll be at least like 9.
Okay.
Yeah, we're a Republican state. It'll be 9, but
it
won't be relevant to anything.
I think he's 10 points, and I'll ask you what it's going to be relevant to, and that's the governor's race. I have to say that you probably could have predicted this would be the outcome of this governor's race at filing. COVID threw a monkey wrench into it. Obviously, the governor getting COVID, I thought was a moment where that race could have got volatile. But it looks like to me, pretty much you have 2 qualified candidates who ran good campaigns that have probably got a little personal as campaigns do. But at the end of the day, 2 qualified candidates, they're both running in a Republican state, the Republican's going to win.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm supporting Nicole Galloway. I think she's run an incredibly good campaign. I think that she will outperform Joe Biden. And I think if it's close enough, I think that she's the front runner to take on Roy Blunt in 2 years.
What do you think? I mean, I thought she's run a good campaign. Qualified person.
Very.
This is one of the times in our state where if either candidate were elected, Missouri have a good governor.
Yeah.
But I think pretty much the governor's campaign has ran the campaign they need to run to win.
Yeah.
And they will.
Well, I'm a little more hopeful. I think Nicole can pull it off, with this last push. I think that if we just get more turnout in Kansas City, St. Louis County, and, just have that message of the unity that she's been advocating for across the state just really resonate with the residents, I think that she'll be able to pull it off.
I've seen she's been campaigning in outstate Missouri a lot, kind of the McCaskill model of how to win these races, but I'm not sure there's been a lot. Once filing closed, I think this outcome was pretty predictable.
Yeah, listen, she has been handpicked from insiders from the beginning. She was appointed to her first job. She was appointed to the auditor's race, and she had the governor's race handed to her with the DGA spending millions of dollars to support her. They've done everything they possibly could to put her in that mansion, and I just don't think it's going to happen.
The DGA did come in for it big time. I mean, that's something that you thought might happen but couldn't have counted on when the race started, but it's still, I think the outcome has been pretty predictable.
I think so too. Look, she's no Chris Koster, she's no Jay Nixon, she's not even Bob Holden. She's not that strong of a candidate. I don't mean the respect. I think she's a very good person, but and I have disclosed I work for United Missouri, which is the governor's PAC, and I work for Tom Burcham and John Hancock. But with that being said, our polling's consistent. Our lowest poll has been at 5 points. And again, we'll underperform considering what's going to actually happen on turnout day. I expect the governor to win by 5 to 8 points. But look, she's got the same amount on TV. She's got a spend of over $14 million on TV the last buys, which is equal to what we're doing. So
you're a
anytime you do
Democrat
that,
candidate, you got to feel kind of good that national folks are going to invest.
And she has no record to defend.
Give me a number. What's the governor win by?
Win by 7.
I think 8.
I think she wins by at least 5.
I like that.
I'm supporting her, but I think the governor by 4.
I think Parson comes in with 8. I think that's just kind of where it's at. Jeff Raver, let me ask you about a race that may turn a little differently, the Congressional district. When they drew that district, I don't think people thought this was going to be a top-tier national competitive race, and it's turned into that.
Well, remember, we are 10 years since redistricting, right? And so this happened once before. Remember, what was it, 1990, Joan Kelly Horn against Jack Buechner, and that district had, generally moved from red to blue, and she won. And then after redistricting, she lost to Jim Talent. It feels like the same thing, that we win that race this time, and then they do whatever underhanded gerrymandering they do, and they take it back in 2 years.
So that Congressional district, that is where you picked up a House seat.
Yeah.
You may pick up a Senate seat.
Yeah.
That has become the battleground, kind of shifted from Jefferson County and South County over into West County, where the base of that district is. What happens on Election Day?
I think it's going to be an upset. I think that it goes in our favor. It goes in the Democratic favor, and all I can say is that we're just seeing this trend in Missouri where we have these battleground races, and a lot of these races are going toward Democrats. So I think it's going to be important that this comes about.
I think that if Ann Wagner was the Republicans, anybody else but her, this race would be over. I think she's held the tide and made this competitive.
So Ann has done an incredible job for the district. Congresswoman Wagner has been really at the forefront of sex trafficking protection for victims, doing common sense types of things that the district cares about. And I think she holds the seat. It was a close race in 2018, and she was able to win it really handily against somebody without a record to run against. Jill Shoup has a very liberal record. She's out of step with the district. She wants, expansion of Medicare for all. Ann fits the district better. She's been serving the community. I think she holds on to the seat.
Can Republicans hold on to this congressional seat?
Absolutely. Wagner is going to overperform in South County. That's where she's from. That's actually trending the opposite way. They are Trump Democrats. They're carpenters. They are Catholic and Baptist and pro-life and pro-gun. You've got Jefferson County, which is going to overperform, and St. Charles. Again, Shoup is too liberal. I think if she were against her opponent last time, this would be a different race. But look, guys, everybody knows she has been outspent on this thing. They have thrown everything at her, but she's maintained her numbers. And so even though it's competitive, I think on Election Day she comes out ahead.
Give me a prediction. What's the margin there?
2 points
Shoup?
for Shoup.
I think the same.
I'm going to say I think Ann does a little better. I think she does 3 points.
I think Ann by 2, 3.
I'm going to say 4, but I was going to say 3. Just so we're
It's like Price is Right rules now.
Right.
Okay, Dave, let's talk State House and State Senate race. The Democrats are defending one in the Senate. The Republicans are defending 2 very competitive ones. The State House, give me a prediction here. Where the Democrats, I think we all agree they may gain or hold.
Yeah.
Where do they get in the House and Senate?
So I actually think they'll do better in the House because your House You don't have the kind of media and the impressions that you can give. So in a wave election, and what we're seeing is two waves. We're seeing a rural wave where we'll probably hold everything, and we're seeing an urban wave. Same thing we saw against Holly and Claire. Claire overperformed in the cities, but underperformed outstate, and so she still lost. I think you're going to see 8 seats down on the House, maybe more, and maybe 1 in the Senate, if not 2.
What Democrats do in the State House?
I think that we're going to do well in the State House. I think we're going to pick up a few seats in the Senate. I hope we just get to the point where there's no longer a supermajority in the House so that the House Democrats can actually have some say over things.
What's going to happen on election night? How many more people are going to be in that caucus meeting?
I'm hoping more than 8, but I think it's going to be a very good night for Democrats. It's going to be a very good night for the citizens of Missouri to actually have some representation where we can actually do a lot more.
What happens in West County in that Senate race with Deb Lavender, your colleague?
Oh, I think Deb gets it. I think Deb is going to do an incredible job. She's going to be an incredible senator.
Tell me about what happens. How many more of your colleagues will maybe not be back?
So 197 of us serve in the legislature, and I think that it's really hard to think that any one of us makes that big of an impact. It is absolutely everyone's there to represent their districts, and 1 or 2 or even 4 or 5 isn't going to make a giant switch. I think that we hold the supermajority in the House, and I think that Caleb Rowden's able to pull it out. And I've done a lot. I'm unopposed this cycle, so I've been knocking doors,
so you're on the ground
right. I've been on the ground, and the feel at the doors does not support that Deb Lavender is going to win. In precincts that we shouldn't be playing in, there's Koenig signs everywhere. I just think that he's going to hold on to it by the hair of his chinny chin chin.
HRCC is probably the most historically successful political organization in the history of Missouri. I hear these every prediction. The Democrats are going to pick up 6, 8 House
Senate
seats.
Committee actually a little more. But
I think probably they pick up 1 or 2. I mean, I've just never seen HRCC not vastly overperform everyone. Now that could change,
agree.
but we'll see. But with a minute left, Jeff Rainford, who won the week?
Who won the week? So I'm going to say Sam Page. So the county council sustained his vetoes of those dumb bills to take authority away from him. And with COVID really taking off nationally, I think it also demonstrates that he's doing the right thing. And then secondly, the American people, the last 4 years seem like 40 years, and they're about to end.
Yeah, I have to agree. I believe that the American people won the week. I believe, activists won the week by being able to advocate for the injustices that are being done. Right now, we know that Philadelphia is in a very different place. So I'd have to say the activists won the week.
Oh, I have a couple people. Bob Zahulin for coming on and taking on the DGA. Mavis Busick, John and Josh Thompson, and Jamie Murphy. All people in politics who just do an amazing job. And Carol Kehoe, who's like a newbie out there, but she's done an amazing job.
She has done great work. Who won the week?
So I think that Chris Cook, he's been running Ann Wagner's campaign,
terrific.
doing a fantastic job.
I was going to say Eric Schmidt for taking on politicians that perjure themselves on forums. I'm going to say Sean Nicholson. Totally reformed the entire political discussion and for the next 10 years maybe. We'll see you back here next week to see whose predictions were right and whose were wrong on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics, sponsored by the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, Spire, and Sterling Bank.